Hello there.
Welcome to my first video of making a terrain build, and you have done plenty.
Yes, I've done plenty of them. We're starting with cutting some Playmobil pieces because we thought it was a good idea to use them.
But they looked so good for the wooden beams.
But they were too big.
Yeah, we didn't use them.
So it was an hour or 2 hours just time wasting.
I don't think it was that long, but yeah, that was a bit of a waste of time. Because this is my first time making a terrain build. My friend from Gaaam Craft has offered his help on this project, and I'm very glad that he did. So now he's also here to help me with the voiceover.
We are started like I normally do. Not actually normally, because he made sketches for his building and I don't make sketches.
You don't plan that far ahead?
No.
Yeah, I made like a couple sketches, but we didn't fully follow them, but it was a good guideline.
And then we just started out cutting the floor plan, the walls. You can also see a blue miniature, and that's an unpainted one, to just for scale.
Yeah, we used some of your original builds as reference for scale.
You can also see them in the background.
Yeah, and then I was cutting the walls and the beams to go against the walls.
Yeah, the wooden beams that you typically see with medieval buildings.
Yeah, they always have those.
You know, that's for the structure and stability of the building.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the medieval buildings look better than sometimes buildings of this time.
That's true. I was still kind of trying to see if we can fit the Playmobil pieces on, but we did not end up using them, so we just continued making the beams from foam, and then Mister Gaaam is on the right gluing them on the house while I am cutting them.
You can also see that we sometimes take my already made buildings just to dry fit some things, or just to get some shapes right, like doors.
Did I use your door for inspiration? I think I did. You are now cutting the upper floor?
Okay, this was I think 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeter bigger than the floor plan.
To give a bit of an overhang.
You also typically see that with medieval buildings.
And then I am cutting out the floor plan for the 3rd floor. That's only a partial floor.
You can also see we had some trouble with some hot glue guns, the pink one.
Oh yeah, that's true.
We forgot the glue wasn't coming out, so we forgot about it, but it was still warm.
Yeah, my hot glue gun got jammed, so nothing came out, but it still continued heating up. That was probably not safe, but now it's working.
So this was after we did the first session of building the house at my place. Now we're at your place.
That's true. That's my table. Gluing in the magnets, so are you, to attach the floors.
And we also made a mistake with the magnets, I thought, and I don't know anymore.
No, it was just the glue got in between the 2 floors, so I had to cut it apart.
Also giving texture to some things, I think.
Yeah, you're making the outside of the you're making the fireplace.
Yes,
you made a paper template and then you cut that out a couple of times and glued it together. You can see that most of the outside beams are already done, but we did keep a few holes that we'll later put windows in. Look at that. When you speak of the devil, you're cutting the windows right now. And we also,
maybe it's also a good idea to, before you mount the walls to the floor, to then already cut out the windows, because then you get straighter lines than when you do it when they are already glued.
We also made the staircase on the side. And now I'm making a couple more diagonal beams on the first floor. Oh, you can also see me fiddling with a little LED light that I wanted to use in the fireplace, but didn't end up doing because there was not enough space.
So you're making as some sort of a in-between beam to create an arch. To
You're also making an archway on the first floor. On the ground floor, I am making one on the first floor. It's funny because we have quite different styles. So the archway on the bottom floor, it's like really, an arch, and mine is more made out of wooden beams.
And it's more like a rectangle.
Yeah, I think it's funny that we both made an archway but did it quite differently. Oh, and now you're gone. Great help from you, and then I continue working on it for a couple more days. First I decided to give the ground floor a wooden floor made out of
just some cheap wooden sticks.
But unfortunately these wooden sticks are way too thick, so they're quite painful to cut. And now I wanted to make the roof, so I cut out the chimney so that the roof could fit on, and then later I cut a hole in the roof so that the chimney could pass through. Here I am continuing to glue the floor down on the floor.
Because the floor is made out of the floor.
I wanted to give the sides of the roof a bit more detail, so I also added a couple of beams to give it more depth and also make it look more structurally sound, if that's the correct terminology.
I don't know. Languages are hard to speak and read and understand.
Also those square wooden beams are quite difficult to cut, so you see me just using a saw instead of a crafts knife.
And that's actually also the most what you always see with these things is just cutting pieces and gluing pieces, because it's just making something like a building.
It always looks so easy when you see a time lapse of it, but then when you're actually doing it in practice, like, things are surprisingly difficult to cut or to measure. You always forget to measure and then you redo everything 3 times. I think I'm creating the front porch. There's a little fence and a little roof there. Now you can see the front porch is finished.
Now the favorite part of making a roof, cutting the shingles.
It was surprisingly satisfying because I now have like a big paper cutter, and it worked very well with cardboard, so I just got a bunch of strips and then cut them in a bunch of squares and then just glued them on randomly. I probably should have done it with a bit more precision because it looks quite messy now, but hey, it's my first time and I think it looks fine. But definitely next time if I do this, I will make them a bit nicer.
But now you can think about some lore of the building. Why are the shingles, or why aren't they placed straight?
How are they even attached?
Yes, lore is always fun.
Never thought about the lore of this building till I read a book about it.
No, just start your own world and make some lore about that. The student wants his own D&D world.
Fast I'm gluing the shingles. Wow! Ah, no cutting boards. One of many.
Clean one.
Yeah, a bit too small still, but it's better. Oh yeah, I noticed that my my glue broke, so I had to redo that. And oh, look at that, now I'm texturing all of the wooden beams. Boy, were there a lot of them.
Yeah, I thought it was already done, but apparently it isn't.
Nope. Even my pen just ran out of ink, but luckily you don't actually need ink to draw the texture. It's just you're using the pen to make grooves, which later on become visible after you paint them.
You could also do this with a pencil.
I just have this very fine pen,
Yeah.
and then later on I use a thicker pen right now
Yeah.
for a bit bigger grooves in the planks. Now I'm using my craft knife to basically cut up the floor and give it a lot of scratches to make it look used.
You could also do this with a wire brush, but then you need to do it before you glue the planks in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it is pretty hard to get the wire brush into the building.
Now I'm drawing a crap ton of little stones on the outside of the chimney.
That's always fun to do.
Yeah, you can also see my process, because the couple first stones that I draw don't look very good, but as I move forward they start to look much better.
Yeah, it's always, this is your first building, so it's a learning experience. It's always a learning experience.
That's true, and I did learn a lot. So probably next time that I do this, it will hopefully go a bit better and hopefully a bit faster, because this actually took way longer than expected.
Also to record the other audio, it took way too long, because right now when we are recording the other audio, it's more than a year ago we filmed this.
Yeah, that's true. This part of the video was filmed more than a year ago. It's also kind of sad because it took so long to finish it that now that the video is almost complete, this building is almost a year old.
But we already used it in one of our D&D sessions where I'm DMing. It was a good building.
Thank you.
We didn't use the insides, but just more to make a
whole town.
Yeah, I probably have an image of it.
I have. I'll put it on screen right now.
Or maybe right now.
Well, who knows? I don't.
Yeah.
The editor does.
But you're the editor.
Who knows? Am I?
Probably.
No, I'm voice recording Caspro. That's editor Caspro, not the same person.
No, this is crafting Caspro, where you're looking at.
That's true. I didn't make this, I was crafting Caspro, just like you said. Let's see, just more fiddling with the magnets, making sure they're aligned, which is surprisingly difficult.
Yeah.
Also, the top floor was a bit too fragile, so I thickened the beams a bit so that it wouldn't break when you removed it. Now I am once again using my trusty pen to carve out the wooden beams on the first floor to also give that a wooden floor. Now on to painting, one of my least favorite things to actually do. That's why it probably also took so long, because the painting just, didn't really have much motivation. You told me to first cover it in a black layer, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it's also a little bit to protect the building. Mostly it's Mod Podge mixed with black paint or some ceiling PVA glue.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't never do that. I just do a black base layer, so that's everything is evenly already in one color, because sometimes if you're using a pen to make textures, you have a color difference, and sometimes when you paint you can, although it's the same color, you can always see a little bit of a color difference between the parts where the pen was and where it wasn't.
Yeah, so it's to bring everything in the same color.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was impatient and I just spray paint the other 2 floors, which actually turned out to be a big mistake because the spray paint I used actually started to corrode, I think that's the word.
Melt.
Yeah,
Like,
it started to melt the foam, causing it to
melt or deform.
yeah.
When you're spray painting foam, you always need to make sure you have some sort of a protection layer on it, or
so that you don't end up actually
melting,
breaking through the foam. Luckily for me, it didn't do too much damage, so I was able to continue without too much problem.
I think the first time I spray painted something on foam, I forgot to some sort of prime it.
Yeah.
But actually, the project where I was working on, it turned out to be pretty good. Because it was not in walls, it was in a floor area, but a natural floor, like a sand base. But it just gave it more elevation.
Funny. It did give more texture, yeah, but on some parts the door, it is now a bit too thin. I also forgot to carve a wooden floor on the top part, which is actually not visible. Originally the walls on the inside were going to be white and the outer walls are also going to be a very light color, but because the base color was black, it did take a couple of layers to actually finish with a clean white color in the end. So when you're doing a light color on a dark base layer, make sure that you do enough coats so that the original base layer doesn't spill through too much.
Not every color covers like another color, like yellow. Yeah. Yellow is one of the worst colors to paint because you need to paint several layers to get pretty good base.
Result.
But like with a black, mostly with one layer, it's pretty good.
For the roof, I went with this kind of orangey red color because I thought that it fitted the building quite nice. And for the exterior walls, I went with a more sandy, quite light, but with a bit of yellow color. The inner walls are also mostly white, with a bit of beige. After realizing that my exterior walls all had a slightly different tint, I just went back and repainted all of them in the same color.
It's like a tan or sandy color.
Yeah. It's a lot of white with a bit of yellow to create this very nice, sandy color. I like it. It's not too flashy, but also not too plain. Now I'm mixing up a slightly darker color to kind of stipple all over the place to give it a bit more contrast and a bit more color difference on the elevated parts. Normally you would dry brush this, but my walls did not have enough texture to actually use a dry brushing technique.
Yeah, if you want to just like this, just to give walls texture, you could use some fine sand to it, but not too fine, but that you get enough texture.
The chimney I did mostly grey, but also added a little bit of yellow for more color variation. You don't really notice it, but I think it looks nice. The inside of the chimney was especially difficult to paint, but I did manage to do it. For the ceilings, I just went with plain white and add a bit more grey to make it look dirty. And for the inner walls, it's still a mixture of yellow and white, but with a bit of variation of the amount of yellow and the amount of white. You can see that on the bottom floor the walls looked a bit too salmon for my liking, so I also went over them with the new color, make it a bit more lighter and a bit more uniform as well. Also, I need to figure out some better camera angles. I forgot to paint a little roof for the front porch, so I'm doing that now. Don't think it makes sense that I also painted the bottom. Now I'm actually using a dry brush technique to highlight all the edges for my roof using a lighter color.
And also tip, if you're dry brushing a roof, always dry brush down, so from the highest point of the roof to the lowest point, so you get some the tips of every shingle, yeah, thank you, it gets highlighted, and so that you get a that the sun is shining on the roof.
Ah, highlight.
Yeah, highlight.
Now I'm using a different brown for all the beams and for the staircase on the side, making sure to not accidentally cover the walls, because I don't have that paint anymore, but I'm pretty sure I did, so I had to do some touch-ups. Painting the fence for the porch. To redo my ceilings because I got covered in other paint, so I had to redo the white. Now I'm painting the doors and dry brushing a bit more detail onto all the wooden parts. Adding a couple different colors on the floor to give it more detail and more weathered look.
You could also use some oil washes to give it more color variation, like the washes sink into the deepest places and like in the corner, so you get a good idea of some shadow.
It gives more contrast to each style. I might do that the next time, but I don't have those materials, so I'll look into it. Right now I tried gluing on the roof, which failed horribly because it stuck in all the wrong places, so I had to rip it off again and re-glue it. You can see right now I have to carefully cut it all off again. That was not fun. It's never fun when that sort of stuff happens, but luckily it turned out okay without damaging too much of my roof. is in place, the whole house is complete, and it's time to look at the final result.
We hope that you enjoyed the video,
It certainly did take a lot of time to make.
and we hope to see you back in the next video.
And also, thank you, Mr. Gaaam, for helping me with this project
That's no problem.
and being here to also record the voiceover with me.
After a year.
Yes, after a year. Now I can finally upload the video.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.